Let's get a new tape going. All right, Richard, here's what we're going to do.
We need a voice exemplar.
I want you to say into this phone, there's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
Richard, you're a national hero now.
Thank you, sir. But I was just doing my job.
You always look at the guy who found the bomb, just like you always look at the guy who found the body.
Jewell fits the profile of the lone bomber.
A frustrated white man who is a police wannabe who seeks to become a hero.
We're running it. You're a suspect. You don't talk. I talk. Say it.
I don't talk.
This might be the only way to clear your name. I want you to say there's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
Stop trying to be their best friend.
I was raised to respect authority.
Authorities are looking to eat you alive.
There's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
I'm sorry, what?
His accusers are two of the most powerful forces in the world, the United States government and the media.
I do want to help y'all. I'm law enforcement, too. There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
Did he do it?
Richard Jewell is an innocent man. He's a hero.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
One more time, just a little louder.
I report the facts.
You've ruined this man's life.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
Do a couple in a row.
My son saved people's lives.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
You set that bomb.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
I don't know how to protect you.
I think your client is guilty as hell.
They want to fry you.
You ready to start fighting back?
My next guest's filmography includes Grey's Anatomy, Beverly Hills 90210 when it was good, In Living Color, Quantum Leap, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and you can currently find him in Richard Jewell portraying Bryant Gumbel. Please welcome Garon Grigsby. Garon, how is life treating you today? How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well. How are you doing?
Good. So, Garon, there's some things. So when I put this all together, I try to fill in gaps. I try to get things, in order here. I could not find for the life of me where you were born, where you grew up. Fill that space of time in for me, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that you'd be doing pretty well to find that. I was born in Rock Island, Illinois, and grew up in Moline, Illinois, which is really the same thing. It's like, Hollywood and West Hollywood. You're standing in Moline, you take a step to your right, and you'd be in Rock Island. So my family lived in Moline. The hospital just happened to be in Rock Island, I think. And I was born there. I went to Western Illinois University and got a Bachelor of Business degree, which I don't know how many of those are around.
Right.
But after college, made my way to the West Coast, and here I am.
And now, did you a minor, any other side training, whether it was high school or Western Illinois, any training in acting whatsoever at that point?
No, nothing. No, I mean, no, not in acting. We used to have a variety show every year in high school, but I played in the stage band, so I wasn't an actor. Gotcha.
And any sports in high school, anything of that nature? I know you said stage band, but anything else?
Yeah, it's just funny you mentioned. I was thinking about that earlier today. I actually at some point or other participated in like 4 different sports in high school, but I was primarily a track and field guy, and that's how I got to college. And so I put myself through college, and so that my major sport was track and field.
So I have to ask, I'm looking at, your career in itself. So what sparks the acting bug for you? What does it for you? Is there anything that, because obviously, you your background up to this point, not really, an actor's background per se, but what kind of changes things for you? Where does the tide shift a little bit for you?
Yeah. Excuse me. Like I said, I was in sports. I essentially walked away from my job as a garbage man to to come to California to be able to work out in the warm weather. And at that time, there were a lot of athletes that were getting in commercials. I kind of noticed that. I was always looking for a way to work less at normal jobs and have more time to work out. And I was kind of living what for me was a worst case scenario of that, which I was trying to hold down a full-time job and then work out after hours. I was working in the aerospace industry and worked with a group of women, and a couple of them suggested to me that I might try modeling. And again, I'm thinking, well, how could I make money? And one of them knew somebody who had been in the industry and had that person talk to me, but they were not very helpful, and they were actually less than helpful to the point where it kind of irritated me. And I thought, well, I don't need that person. I could figure this out on my own. So I did. I started knocking on doors and eventually got my way into a modeling agency. And once you're kind of in the business, so to speak, it's just baby steps to the side and you're kind of doing everything. So, I mean, within a year, I was acting as well. So looking back at what you just said, I have to say, nobody's ever told me I should try modeling. So I think that's reflective of what I look like. So when somebody says that to you, that's pretty flattering. And, you kind of make your own way. Going back a little bit, and I'm sorry if I missed this. Yeah, no.
You said you left your job as you said something about trash or garbage. I missed that. Yeah,
I don't know why I threw that in there. But I was a garbage man. That was my job, my summer and weekend job through high school and college. I started off hanging on the back end and eventually became a driver, and I drove different kinds of mostly garbage trucks, but I drove a semi too. I actually had a 18-wheeler license when I was 16.
Wow.
So some guys took their driver's test in a car. I took mine in a semi. I found a little loophole that I was not legally allowed to drive, but I was legally allowed to have the license. So I went out and got the license, and it makes for interesting bragging rights.
Yeah, Garon, those are the little things though that really kind of are so fascinating about a story, right? Because you look at kind of the actor you've turned into, and it's the little things along the way. Like, I mean, podcasting is something I love to do. I spend a lot of time in it, but I have a job. But, I did those little jobs. Like I was a custodian in the summer, same way those jobs kind of build character. They definitely kind of, I think, they help you lead you down the path you ended up being on. So did you find any, I don't want to say redeeming qualities because I don't think that's the right way to phrase it, but do you feel like those jobs added anything to, your work ethic, realizing what, this is the kind of stuff that, that I need going forward. Not so much that what you're doing day to day, but the character and the ethic that it brings with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Without question, it's a huge part of what makes me me. I have had the great fortune all my life to have all kinds of good role models, and that job, helped to teach me, among other things, teach me how to work and how to work hard. It's very difficult work, at least, the kind, I mean, not to take anything away from the guys now, but they kind of, out here in California, they sit in the truck all day and it's done mechanically. The way that I did it was akin to lifting weights while running all day long. It's hard work and it's dangerous work and it's a very a very blue collar environment, and being able to put in a good physical day's job was a big deal. And I actually worked for my uncle's company, and I had a little, I guess you'd call it even more on, because I was a young guy. I started when I was 15. Like I said, I was in high school, and then I was the boss's son, so to speak. So I had eyes upon me for that. And it's character building. I would get up at 3:30 in the morning, I think, and ride my bike. I don't know how many miles to the job, and then work all day, however long that took, 8, 10, 12 hours, and then ride my bike back home and start all over the next day. And it was quite a juxtaposition for when I later, I mentioned, I think, that I worked in aerospace. I worked in the space shuttle program for a few years. And so it's and that was an office environment. I worked in a cubicle farm, and it's sort of opposite end of the spectrum. And so I guess I've had a what would you call it, a rounded experience, because I've done lots of other little things in between those two jobs. And but yeah, it definitely helped to make me who I am, whoever that is.
No, and that's a good thing. It's not, and it is the jobs, but it's also amazing how much you accomplished at such a young age, right? Because we're talking 15, 16. You mentioned the 18-wheeler. Obviously riding your bike at 3:30 in the morning to work and then back. I mean, my God, that's an unbelievable work ethic. But you did it at such a young age, which makes it so much more impressive, Garon. That's the thing, and I think kids, not that kids today are different than, because you and I think are roughly the same age, but I don't know. I think work ethic has changed over the years, but that's certainly, I think, played a part into who you are today. And let me ask you this: so you mentioned aerospace, right? Before we get to modeling, talk a little bit about that. You're a successful actor. You've done a lot of things here. But do you ever look back and say, what if, when it comes to aerospace? Because it's such a fascinating field.
No, not aerospace specifically. I to be honest, I've looked back and say, well, what if I would have just gone a different way and maybe gotten a regular job? I might have done other things, because I certainly had other things in mind. I was not. Acting wasn't on my radar at all. My plan was to win a gold medal in the Olympics and go from there. And that didn't work out. And so sometimes I think, mostly on days when I'm wondering how to pay the next bill, I'm thinking, I wonder if I'd have done something different if I have more money now.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And you find yourself in this modeling agency. So how do you go from the modeling agency to kind of getting into acting itself? How do you kind of make that transition? Because you're in a way, but you're not in as an actor just yet. So how does that kind of transform?
Sure. I was interested in commercials. Because I had the Olympics were going on, and a lot of athletes, like I mentioned, were in commercials, and the rumors were that they were making very good money for doing this. They were probably exaggerated rumors, but so I had an interest in that. And when I began modeling at the agency, they had a commercial department, and I walked over there and asked about if I could get on board, and basically I did. And one day my commercial agent said, "You've got an audition for soap opera tomorrow or the next day," something like that. And what was the soap opera? I can't. Santa Barbara.
Yep,
it's an old one. And I said, "Well, I don't do that. I don't know anything about it." And I wasn't particularly interested. I didn't think that acting was. I kind of thought all actors were weird, and didn't really have that much interest. But she said, "Well, you have the audition. It's hard to get. I got it for you. So go and see what happens." And so I did, and I didn't get the role, but the casting director was quite complimentary and encouraged me to pursue it, and encouraged my agent to encourage me to pursue it. So the agent said, "You're going to do this," and she kind of pushed me along a little bit to start taking some classes, and that's how it got started.
Yeah, and good for you that you had an agent. That it sounds like your agent really worked hard for you, which is not from my experience talking to actors, which may or may not always be the case, you know?
Yeah, no, oftentimes I think, changing, not to demean them or anything, but oftentimes changing agents is like swapping deck chairs on the Titanic. but no, this was a different time, a little bit of a different age, and she was kind of looking out after me and thought she saw something, and here I am.
So did you find that because you had no training, I mean, you're working your way along, was the transition difficult? Did you find, learning lines, learning method, learning all the stuff that comes with acting? Was that difficult for you? Was that something you picked up easily?
I think I had some natural things going for me. Memorizing is one of them. I'm just one of those people. I can memorize things. I have a friend of mine, and we tape each other's scenes sometimes, and I'll go through it once or twice and basically have it.
Wow.
And he's just cussing at me and and everything. So that wasn't hard, and I found that I liked doing it. I'm sorry, I've kind of forgotten the first part of your question.
No, just the fact that, was it, just coming into your own as an actor. I mean, there's a lot to learn if you're doing it right. Yeah, and you're a guy that to me seems like when he does something, he does it right. So it's just a tough thing to pick up, I would think, because like I am horrible. I am the opposite of you at memorizing. I'm horrible at, like, I write down everything. I've got, like, if you can see my, my setup here, I've got stickies everywhere. I'm the opposite of you. But apparently, I mean, it sounds like you were meant to act. You have a gift for, the craft itself. So that's got to be huge for you.
Well, I was also lucky in that the class that I got directed to, I stayed there for a long time, was really the perfect kind of class for me, because there's all kinds of different schools of acting, schools of thought and philosophy on how to do it and how it should be done. And I was fortunate to go into one that appealed to sort of my personality, I guess. It was very sort of straightforward, and there was a lot of it was just technical. It kind of focused on technical things, and it wasn't one of these classes where you spend 20 minutes, barking like a dog to warm up. And I just couldn't. I wouldn't have been able to handle that kind of thing. This was, this is where you got to get there, however you got to get there, but this is what you got to do, and this is what you want to do. And again, there was a lot of stagecraft in it, and just things that were more. Technical isn't a good word, but as opposed to, the more esoteric sort of guru type classes that you hear about, because that would have run me out right away. So I enjoyed that class. I stayed there for a long time. I've been meaning to go back, actually, when I get a few extra coins. And I think I was just fortunate to come across a good situation, and lent itself to my hanging in there. And yeah, there.
Now, is there a movie or an actor or a show that when you were kind of coming up that you were really, or even as a kid possibly, that you really loved? I mean, because I'm a big believer that, you came into acting in a very unique way, but I think this is what you were meant to, do and meant to be. And, is there something early on that maybe planted the seed, a show, an actor, a movie for you personally, or was it you're just a fan of everything? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't think that there was anything that foreshadowed my being an actor, really, that I can kind of think of. I mean, I like movies. I've always liked movies. I'll sit down and watch just about anything.
Right.
I don't know. My favorite movie is is Top Gun, but that was after I got into acting. Is when that came out. So no, I just kind of fell into it. When my sports career kind of wound its way down. All of a sudden, I'm like, well, what do I do now? Because it didn't go quite the way that I had wanted it to go, and I had this little budding career in the entertainment industry. And I thought, well, okay, I think I'll try this, and it just sort of worked out for me. It sort of suits me. I like doing it. You get to do a lot of different things. I've always been a person who's I have a lot of different interests, and every time you go to work as a actor or model, for that matter, it's at a different place for different people, and you're working with different people, and it's an entirely different environment, and everything's different. And that variety is worth a lot of money in a sense. And it for somebody like me, it's kind of good for the soul. I don't get stuck in one place doing one thing.
Yeah, and you and I talked off here how we had a very similar day. We brought up the very iconic Adam Zastrow, the very cool Adam Zastrow, But I have to say, one of the things I found when I had a little bit of downtime today was I swear to God, hand to God, I watched the two new trailers. There was one that came out earlier in the year, and there's one that came out recently for the new Top Gun movie. So I think it's very funny how you mentioned Top Gun. Are you okay with the new one coming out, or are you kind of a nostalgic? I liked it back where it was. Are you looking forward to the new ones?
Yeah, I don't have a problem. I'd be very interested to see what happened. My biggest problem with it is that I'm not in it.
Yeah.
and didn't know anything about it until I saw trailers for it. But I wanted to be a pilot. I expected and kind of planned to go in the military, and I came along at kind of a weird time. And just decided, well, when I wanted to do sports, that was going to be something, that was in a different direction. And when that movie came out, I thought about it again. And so it's more the I suppose the military and the flying aspect of it that appeals to me more than the story.
And a touch of your aerospace background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was random. Those weren't connected.
No, I get it. Yeah, but I have these notes written down. I'm like, well, I guess we could fit that in there too, a little bit. Maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm looking at your filmography. We talked a little bit about this. You've done some Grays, Beverly Hills 90210, and Living Color. I was rewatching your, the beginning of your Fresh Prince appearance. I love Quantum Leap. We're going to get to Richard Jewell in a moment. Is there anything that was really memorable? Because we did talk soap opera and so forth. But then when you kind of get into, the meat and potatoes of, the TV and movie end of it, do you find, was there anything memorable from those days? Because you're with a lot of just great actors there, right? Your time on some, in Living Color is just such an iconic show, and it's a groundbreaking show in my opinion. And
absolutely,
Quantum Leap, my God, I every episode, I think I was in tears in most episode. And what a wonderful concept! You know what? We talk about Top Gun, Garon, and I don't mind that because it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and sure. I love the fact you keep going with it. The one issue I do have though is remakes. I don't like when people kind of go after something that's already been done. They're doing it with Home Alone, but I guess that's an argument for another time. With classics, leave it alone. Let it.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, they remade High Noon. I remember once a while back. I'm like, my God, why would you do that? So but I don't look at, not to beat up Top Gun, but I look. It's a continuation. It's him years later.
Exactly. Much
I don't mind reunion shows. I kind of like that. to see the people now and see what they look like and see the story continue. I would not like to see Top Gun remade, but I don't mind seeing a sequel, especially when it's a lot of years later. It's not like they're just like they do now. They just bang out 1, 2, 3 year after year, and it might be very good. It might not be. I don't know, but for somebody who was as fascinated with the original, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, and I don't want to bait you into, and that's not how I work. I don't want you to say something negative, and then like somebody from the show's listening, and they don't give you. But like, so I'll give you an example of something I'm talking about. Like Magnum PI. Why would you ever remake that? I'm not saying the actors are bad. I'm not saying the new show is bad, but it would just seem like if somebody remade Quantum Leap, I would be furious. Like I would be like, why would you touch that show? It was done so well. I don't know. That's mine.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, why? If the show, and I think Magnum PI, I think it's doing okay.
It is doing okay.
To me, that just means it would have done just as well. I think with a different title and different characters, but the same show. It just means it's a good show.
Yeah, true.
But I guess that's how they grab an audience is by the old people who are nostalgic for the old show and to see how it stacks up. But again, that's a remake, not a sequel.
Right. No, well said.
Interesting that you mentioned In Living Color. The day that I worked on that show was the date that the first Gulf War started. And that was it was a freaky day.
Right.
And I remember them, all production stopped. And they had it, if you've seen video or film of that day, all the cruise missiles not cruise missiles, well, that too, but just the tracers going across Baghdad. And they put that on all the monitors in the studio, and everything just came to a halt. And we're all just standing there staring at it. And it was a weird day. But that's one of two main memories of that show, which was that. And then I remember the particular scene that I did, there was a little bit of controversy on the set. A couple of people were unhappy about it, and so they had to work that out. But yeah, interesting day.
And it's experiences like that, just the cast. I mean, from, I think Artie Lang spent time on that show, and Jim Carrey, obviously, and then it's just a great show. And we talked, Fresh Prince is also an iconic show for a lot of reasons. So the fact that you're a part of that's a great thing. I mean, and if I'm not wrong, I want to say it was episode 1, season 3. Right off the bat, you were involved with that, I think.
I think it was season 1, episode 3.
Right. Did I say it backwards?
Yeah.
Season 1, you're right off the bat, you're involved with that. So, I mean, you talk about a show that people remember with fondness and classic. That certainly fits the bill. Sure,
I think why I would remember something so obscure, but I think it was like the 11th episode that they filmed, but when they finally aired the show, it was the third one, and it was interesting. Will Smith was just a kid, and
whatever happened to him?
I don't know. I was turned on late night TV one time and thought I saw a glimpse of him, but I was probably mistaken.
So when you look back at just the ones I mentioned outside of Richard Jewell, is there a memory you have? I mean, you've got to be like, I don't want to say proud of yourself because that's, I feel like that, but you've got to be like ecstatic with kind of what you've accomplished in your career. Is there, when you look back at what you've done, up to that point, and there's other things I'm not mentioning that I'm going to get to in a bit, but how do you feel about all of that? Is there an actor that you had a rapport with? Is there, you mentioned awesome stories, from Living Color, but is there anything that stands out from that time? Because it's all roughly in the same time period, I think.
Well, I guess I kind of think it's sort of spread out. I mean, there's a lot of airtime between Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Grey's Anatomy.
Yes, no, I agree. Grey's was the exception there. You're right.
But it's interesting. I don't know that any one particular thing sticks out. It's when I think of the shows, I have little anecdotes or memories of all of them. And I'll be honest, I had not really stopped to consider the body of work, because you're always kind of on to the next job, and a lot of those things that are classic shows, you didn't really think about it at the time. It was just another day's work. And like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is okay. Well, there's this kid, he was a rapper, and now he's got a show, and all right, I'm on this show, and then I do my couple of days, and then I'm gone, and I'm off to the next thing. And now it's, as you described it, it's kind of classic, same within Living Color. I mean, in Living Color was a big deal even at the time. The show was, but it's like it's only kind of upon reflection that you're like, wow, look at all the people that came out of that show: Jamie Foxx and Jim Carrey and the Wayans brothers, and look where they've all gone to. Like I say, upon reflection, it's like, yeah, okay, I guess I've done a little bit. Yeah, I wasn't stopping long enough to pay attention most of the way, but yeah, upon reflection, it's a bit.
Yeah, and one thing that you can appreciate that I can't always say to all my actors, like I feel like, so from an athlete's point of view, I think you're going to get what I'm about to say. So, living in New England, we have, our sports are doing well when we're not filming other teams' practices. But, I have to say, it's just when I look at you as an athlete, I think you get this. I almost think it's like an athlete's mentality, right? Because they're always like, I played on this classic team, or I was a part of that classic game. To me, and I've never been able to convey this properly, Garon, to actors, but I always feel like, and you definitely touched on this a bit, but like, to me, it would be huge. Like, if I had your career, I would look back and say, my God, I was a part of In Living Color, which was a groundbreaking show. Quantum Leap. I was a huge part. I was a part of this huge show, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, to me, it's like looking back and being part of a championship team or a legendary team, and you're a part of that. History lasts forever, and I feel like it's always such a great thing. And I can never convey that properly to actors, because I almost sound like a fan gushing, and that's not really how I want to sound. but it's like, yeah. But from your point of view, if I was in your shoes, I'd be like, and I think this is you're a very grateful person, but like, I don't know, to me that's how I would see it, almost like being part of a great sports team. It's like you're in that cement forever. You're cemented in that that legendary and iconic moment of time, and I think that's such a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Again, well, I appreciate it. You're very kind. Those are nice words, and it's nice that other people notice the things that I may not have necessarily noticed, and that's kind of my fault for not maybe taking the time to take stock and look at things. The business is kind of like you're only as good as the last thing you did, and they'll say, well, Garon Grigsby, what's he done lately? And I look at my resume, and it's like at one point, I'm looking at my resume, and the only thing on my resume were shows that have all been canceled. Right. And so you're like, oh geez. So instead of thinking, oh wow, that was a great show, it's like, I need something new. I need something that that shows people I'm still working, I'm still out there, I'm still relevant. And so it's a shame, in kind of the rush to always to do better. Perhaps I don't stop and smell the roses like I perhaps should, because like Quantum Leap, that was a great show, and I had an interesting role on it. And I worked on a show here recently called Bluff City Law, and Jimmy Smits was the star, and we had a scene together. We exchanged a couple lines. I had a scene together, and he came up and shook my hand, talked to me for a second, and I just told him, I said, hey, we didn't meet, but I spent a day on LA Law. And and his eyes kind of lit up, because that's a long time ago for him, but obviously a big part of his life, and it's the thing that made him. And so it was interesting to share that moment with him. And again, that's kind of an iconic show. Look at all the people that came out of that show, and perhaps he's the one who's lasted the longest, and maybe done the best. I mean, he's had several other shows after that, but yeah,
he's a pros pro, huh, Garon? Jimmy Smits, he's just a good dude, a great actor. He's a pros pro, I would think.
He was a very nice man.
Yeah.
He's huge. I didn't realize that until I got. He's very tall. So I got a kink in my neck looking up at him. But he couldn't have been during my time and my interaction with him on the set. He couldn't have been nicer. Couldn't have been more gracious. And he did things that he didn't have to do. I mean, that to help me. And certainly, I was a day player and I just had a specific job to do, and it's his show. But he took the time to help me do things that he didn't need to do. And so I thank him for that. And it was a good day.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I did not mention, you've worked in multiple genres, not just what I've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, but you've done some horror. Is there a genre that you prefer? Is there one that you're more fond of, Garon?
I always tell people I've done a little of everything and a lot of nothing. I have had a great time doing whatever I was doing at the moment. I've been happy to work and happy when I'm making a living at the profession that I chose, and everything is different. Everything is new. I've hardly done the same thing twice. So I don't know that I have a favorite. I guess that's a recurring theme with me throughout this. I don't know. I kind of liked it all.
That's a good thing, though. That's reflective of, for those listening, because I know there's directors that listen to this, and I've got so you're kind of you can do everything. You're appreciative of everything, and I mean that's a good thing, though. That's a great quality to have.
Oh, thank you. I'll just say thank you.
Yeah. So going along here, I'm in the theater, right? And this is kind of how when I decide I want to throw an invite out and see if a guest will be on my show. I only ask people that I'm just kind of affected by the performance. I thought you were phenomenal in Richard Jewell, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, as Brian Gumbel, which is fantastic. First off, I want to ask you how you landed that role.
Pretty random, really. A breakdown went out that they were, which is the list of roles that companies are looking to fill, and my agent submitted me for it. Said, "Hey, you have an audition for this," and I actually I booked that job from my agent in Atlanta. And I'm on the West Coast most of the time. And so the way you audition for it is you self-tape yourself. You go out and have a friend do it, or go out and have a service do it. And so I videotaped the scene and emailed it off. And that's the short version. I got the role just from that.
Yeah, and and it's not a spoiler that I say this. You played Brian Gumbel. I mean, which is it more challenging for you, Garon, to portray somebody that actually exists versus portraying somebody that you're creating? I mean, yes, you're creating also with portraying somebody that actually exists, but I mean, it's a little bit more pressure, I would think, from the outside, not so much maybe from your end, but do you find that it's more difficult portraying somebody that actually is in existence, that exists in history?
I would think so. And especially, the guy's still walking around.
Right.
And as are many, many, many people who know him and know of him, although there's a surprising, it's been some years since he was front and center on the Today Show. And I ran into a lot of people who don't know who he is. But yeah, you kind of want to get it right. I mean, at the same time, I'm not him, I'm not Brian Gumbel, and right. I can't, I sometimes have a small gift for mimicry, but I mean, I can't really do him. At least I didn't think so.
Oh, I disagree. I think you were phenomenal. Oh, no. Okay. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. Like, I really thought you were so good.
Well, thank you. What I hoped was to capture the spirit, of the scene and of who he was. And so I kind of looked at him and I said, well, what is it about him that I can kind of try to go after? And that's different because you're trying to like you, as you say, portray a living person, or a person at least who existed, as opposed to a brand new character where you're free to just, where you give it life. This other person's already had a life, and you need to not turn people off in your portrayal of it. So I feel fortunate to have gotten the part, and I think it came off pretty well. I mean, my thought was, well, I didn't hurt myself, but then I listened to you, and I'm going to go with what you said.
No, you should, because I'm telling you, I try when I have a guest on it, I want to really do my homework, and it was one of those movies I was just so blown away by, and I'm a big believer in like just scenes that I feel like make transition the movie or a big part of the movie, and I think that's a big part. Your scene is a big part of the movie because it's really kind of reflective of the I don't want to say theme, but there's where Sam Rockwell is talking to his the man who plays Richard Jewell, escapes me at this time, but about honesty and being forthcoming, and that stems from your part of the movie. I mean, your part of the movie kind of initiated that, kind of sparked that forward. And but before I get to that, did you spend a lot of time studying Brian Gumbel's mannerisms? Because he is on HBO, I think, or did you spend a lot of time, or did you just kind of, I have a gist of what, and you might have already answered this, but do you have a kind of a gist for what he was and how he interviews, his mannerisms, the little things he does, or do you spend an extensive time studying?
No, I didn't spend a lot of time. I went and looked at it. I mean, I haven't seen him lately. I mean, obviously I went and looked him up, and I tried to find some film of what he looked like and what he did back then. And, so again, I tried to kind of pull out some major themes of him, because I didn't expect to be able to just, do an impression. But, you look and you say, well, he's a really good looking guy. Okay, you can't do much with that, but he's very well spoken, and he talks kind of fast, and he kind of clips his words a little bit, and he's just very direct with people.
Right.
And so so those generalities I tried to kind of go with. Now, that's what I attempted to do in the audition, and I kind of thought I pulled it off. Now, I have to say, when I got there, we started changing things around. All that went out the window, because there I am, sitting across from one Oscar winner, being directed by not only an Oscar winner, but an American legend and an icon. And anything that I might have prepared in that regard just went out the window, and I was just trying to get the words out. So I feel good that it came off as well as it did.
Yeah, and for those listening that haven't seen this movie, and shame on anybody who hasn't seen this movie, because I haven't revealed my top 5. Not that my top 5 is special, but it certainly is. And I was so blown away. But you mentioned working. One of the Academy Award winners you're talking about is Sam Rockwell, who portrays Watson Bryant. Is there any? And you're a pro's pro, I get it, but is there any? I don't want to say intimidation, because that's not the right word, but
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And I will, excuse me. I wasn't, I've thought about that, and I've thought, well, why not? Because you would have thought my knees would have been knocking together, and I'd have been stuttering and dropping pencils and everything else, but it was very relaxed. I mean, everybody there was just very nice, and it was a very professional and relaxed set and a relaxed atmosphere. And Sam Rockwell, couldn't have been a better guy. I mean, came up and introduced himself to me, and was just very real and very genuine. No hint of that I saw, at least of the diva or pretension about him. And, he kept asking me, are you okay? Is this okay for you? Do you get that? Does this work for you? And, asking my opinion. And I just kind of went with that, I mean, on a certain level, I kind of, if I might say, I broke my ass to be there,
right.
Right. And so it's where I belong, in a sense. I mean, and I don't mean with Oscar winners and all that. But I mean, on a set I was hired to do this, and they clearly liked what I had done in the audition. So I just kind of tried to go back and figure, well, I'm supposed to be here, so let me do what I came to do. And again, everybody was nice, and because it could have been a lot different. You know, I've been on sets where things are running behind, and you know, money's on the line, and they're not getting what they want, and that just didn't happen. It was just I could not have asked for a better experience. And as you said, I'm not just blowing smoke. It was a great day, and you know, it was a very good day, and I really, really thoroughly enjoyed myself, and couldn't have been better.
Yeah, and I love what you said about, you know what, I busted my ass to be there. I deserve to be there. You're the second guest I've had in a row that kind of has said something like that. And from the outside looking in, Garon, I have to be very honest. I think as an actor, if you don't have that attitude, you're in big trouble. Like, I feel like if you're kind of, yeah, this is great, I'm kind of here, and you know, it's this, I got this part, my agent called it in. If you're not, you know, all in, if your chips aren't all in, and you're kind of like, yeah, you know, then I think that's a problem. You know, your attitude is the exact attitude an actor has to have. You know what? I worked my ass off. I belong here.
Yeah, well, I feel a little nervous saying that, but
that's confidence. There's nothing wrong. That's
true.
not arrogant. That's not arrogant. That's confidence. There's a big difference in that, I think.
Well, no, I think you're right, and I don't mean to overdo it the other way, because you do find people that are overly cocky and that think that they're all that, but there's a difference. You know, I liken it to, I think a lot of times directors and casting people and they're looking for a certain swagger, you know what I mean? And which is nothing more than kind of some self-confidence. And I did feel confident being there, but as I point out, it could have very easily gone the other way. I mean, you know, one wrong look from the man with no name turned Dirty Harry, and I might have melted, but it wasn't like that. And I was able to do my job and you know, it was very good. And yeah, I felt like I had certainly earned my place there.
Sure.
And everybody treated me that way.
Right.
You know, I mean, nobody acted like, you know, who is this guy? No, I was just part of the team, and it was a well-oiled machine, and I'm happy to have been a part of it. And I think everybody else sort of felt the same way.
Yeah, and I wanted to close out the interview talking a little bit about Clint, but I had a couple of questions on Sam Rockwell. Now, when you mentioned how I've had guests that I've worked with, both Sam and Clint, and they've all said the most wonderful things about both of them. Does he ever offer you advice? Does he ever say, you know what, Garon, I think this would be good if you tried this, or what do you think about if you came at me like, you know, does that happen? You know, because I know he was very much like you had mentioned, like he said to you, you know, is this okay? Does he ever offer advice to you in a non, like, you know, maybe you should try this, not like a obnoxious way, but does he ever kind of in a actor's kind of rapport ever offer you, you know, advice or you know, suggest something?
Yeah. He didn't. You know, we changed up a few things from the original script, and I think I got the impression that that Eastwood gave him a pretty free rein to kind of, you know, work in the way that he wanted and to get where he needed to go in the scenes in his way, and he let him try things. And he said, I'd like to try this. You know, are you okay with that? Yeah, sure. Have you done this? Yeah, sure. You know, and what am I going to say, right? But he never said, maybe you might like to try this. I would like to think it was because I gave him exactly what he needed and what he was looking for. Maybe he was just too polite to say different, but we just had a good rapport, He was a good guy, and at the end of the scene, I'll tell you, I thanked him. I said, "Hey, I really appreciate being able to work with you. I'm a fan. I've loved your work over the years, and it's great to get to work with you." And you should have seen the look that came over his face. He seemed genuinely surprised and pleased that I would say that. And I mean, just it was an unspoken thing. I'm like, this is a genuine guy.
Very cool.
And everybody's not, famously so. So in this business, and no, he was just a neat guy, and he was nice to everybody around him. He was completely unpretentious. He wasn't that way with me, and he wasn't that way with. And I guess I feel the need to say that everybody's not like that. There's some people that are throwing their weight around, whether they're entitled to or not. And, I'd say he's entitled to, but he didn't. Just a regular guy. If I'd had more time, he'd be a fun guy to go out and have a beer or six with.
It sounds like it's so great to hear. I mean, from my end, even just hearing you say it, just to hear that somebody's that humble and that I love hearing stories like that. But you know what I loved about what you did in that role is that you came at him. Well, not Sam Rockwell, but his character, Watson Bryant. You came at him. Like, you were on the, I don't want to say you were on the attack, but you didn't let up. And I feel like that's confidence. That was just a really good scene with two great actors. And again, I'm not trying to blow smoke, but I love the way, and I don't know if that's the way it was originally drawn up, but I love how, I don't want to say you were on the aggressive either, but you definitely were the one that was kind of like pushing it on him. And I loved how that scene unfolded. It took a lot of, with the wrong actor, playing Brian Gumbel, that could have been a very just, oh, by the way, interview. But it wasn't. To me, it was very memorable when I left the theater that day.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. And, well, that's kind of the deal is in the interview, Rockwell's character is a little blindsided and a little caught off by guard because there's things that they know that he doesn't know, and they don't make his guy look very good. And, back to, elements of Bryant Gumbel, I'm old enough to remember Bryant Gumbel very well. And that's kind of who he is. I described him before as being very direct, and he didn't really flinch with people. And I think sort of famously so. And it's interesting because Clint Eastwood, he only gave me one bit of direction. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit, I didn't really realize it at the time. I kind of cocked my head and I thought, well, why is he saying that? And then I just kind of went on and did what I was trying to do anyway. And I think I just was kind of lucky and stumbled into it. But we were starting with the very first take, and everybody had kind of, done last touches and everything was set. And he was walking away and he turned and he goes, Brian Gumbel, he goes, it's your show. And then he just walked away. And that's all he ever said to me in terms of direction. And, I kind of realized later, well, he's saying, all this here is yours. Take charge. And, you own the show and this is your guest and you need to be like I think I was, which is sort of have him on the carpet and ask him the tough questions.
Yeah, and, it's funny because we mentioned Adam Zastrow earlier. He worked for David Fincher, who's known for his, I think there's one scene where he shot 75 takes. That is the polar opposite of Clint Eastwood. Because I've heard from multiple actors, and maybe you can or cannot confirm this, but I heard he's, one or two takes, done, let's move on. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah. Now, with our scene, there were 3 or 4 camera moves. So we did end up doing the scene, 6, 7 times, but with each camera angle, different move, we only did 1 or 2 takes. So does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Collectively, we did end up having to do it, but they, they changed angles and they changed lenses a couple of times, but each time it was like once or twice. And that was it, which is fine by me. I 75 takes. That's tough.
Yeah, that's almost, we talk about somebody dropping his, I don't know, I'm not going to judge, but that seems excessive. But you know what do I know? I'm not, David Fincher's an unbelievable director. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if I were there, yes, sir, here's another. But well, that'd be a long day.
Have you heard from Brian Gumbel? Has he reached out? Have your paths ever crossed, after the fact?
No, not up to this point. I'm on the lookout for death threats, but
no, stop.
But no, that would be interesting. I will assume that he's seen the movie or will see it.
Right.
And it would be interesting to hear what he had to say. I met the real Watson Bryant. And I just walked up to him and introduced myself at a rap part or at the premiere, and I said, my name's Garon Grigsby, and I played Bryant Gumbel because I look a little differently. That was a bit made up, and so that was interesting. I mean, he definitely thought that I had captured the essence of who Bryant Gumbel was at the time, and so he was complimentary, and that was nice to hear.
Yeah, there's a very sweet part at the end of the movie, and I'm not giving anything away by saying that Richard Jewell's mother still babysits their children, which if I wasn't in tears before then, I certainly was after. But it's very sweet. What is your take on the entire Richard Jewell story? What is, as a movie fan, as just somebody who's in tune with current events, what's your take on that entire story, Garon?
Well, I'm old enough to remember when all that was happening.
Yep.
And as a former athlete and a track and field athlete, I paid particular attention to the Olympics, and Michael Johnson was a big deal there, and he has an interest. There's an interesting juxtaposition involving him in the movie, and they tore that guy up, man. It's a shame. I'm going to say he was kind of one of the first people that happened to in a modern day sense, where he was kind of tried, convicted, and executed in the media. And I don't know, who am I to say, but it just seems like they do that to people all the time now. It's a lot of shoot first and ask questions later. I think the movie is outstanding. I'm proud to be a part of it. I mean, if it wasn't good enough to work with Clint Eastwood and Sam Rockwell, it's sure is great to be in a movie that they did so well. I think it's a fantastic movie, and I think that Paul Hauser does a spectacular job as Richard Jewell. I mean, it's an unlikely hero, an unlikely leading man, and I felt like he gave a very complex and layered performance to a guy that in less capable hands might have come off as just some kind of a bubba. And I don't think he came off as a very sincere guy who got kind of taken advantage of and overwhelmed. And, I guess it took its toll on him. He died young, unfortunately. And, and it's very timely. I mean, Clint Eastwood's kind of known for that. I mean, you see a lot of the same stuff going on now. I think, it's interesting that at the very time, whether you agree or you disagree, that, the media and the FBI are under scrutiny this very day. And, there you see maybe some beginnings of that kind of thing back then. And it's interesting to sort of look at that and say, yeah, this was maybe a little bit of the beginning of that, and look where it's come to now, because now it's just the same kind of thing, is just in your face 24/7. So timely.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Paul Hauser has just such a wonderful rapport with Sam Rockwell. And you're right, it could have been such a hillbilly kind of just, cheesy character, and it's so not that. It's
at all.
No, he's a deep guy. He's got a huge heart. He's a very honest man, almost too honest for his own good. And I think the movie plays really well on that.
Right, he's very, very smart, very intelligent. I mean,
Yes.
he knew of which he spoke, and then you see him throughout the course of the film become more and more disillusioned with the people and the things that he held up as heroes and icons, and then he just he doesn't want to believe that they're kind of out to get him, and then, they are. And it sort of dawns on him belatedly. And but he comes around and it works out. I mean, it's ultimately, I guess it's a feel good movie, and the I guess the good guys win. I guess I can say that.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, and one of the parts there's a couple parts that are so infuriating, and I won't say what, but when the FBI is speaking to him, it's just just stop talk. Like, what are you guys? I don't know. It's just. I never get angry really that much at movies, but I was pretty angry there. I was like, oh my God, what are they doing? It's just, it really does make you think, and it does make you reflect, because you and I, like I said, we're roughly the same age. And I remember when all this was unfolding, and I wish, it's almost like, I think he would have been so proud, if Richard Jewell was still alive today, he would have been so proud of what Clint Eastwood did.
I think he would. I think you're very correct. And, yeah. It's a good piece of work, and I wish there wasn't. There's a little bit of controversy around it, and I wish that wasn't there. And I hope that, I hope it doesn't hurt them awards wise. I would like to see Paul get an Academy Award nomination. I really think. I mean, this is a tough year for it. There's a lot of really strong performances that are going to be looked at, but I think he ought to get a nomination, and I hope that. Some of the controversy around the film doesn't hinder that. That would be a shame.
No, and I was talking about with a friend over the weekend. I said, this guy is just, it was a performance out of nowhere, and the controversy itself, I won't go into details, but it's just not. I don't know. I just felt like it's I wouldn't have picked up on it, like, because they don't show any type of scenes. But the fact, if you're looking at the facts, I mean, the fact is. The story was released without a lot of double and triple checking, and as a result, that helped start the ball and kind of the beginning of ruining a man's life. But that's neither here nor there. I guess we can debate that all day long. But I just a very small part of it. I mean, for those of you that haven't seen it, Richard Jewell is in theaters now. I had one of my a close friend said, "Should I see it?" I said, "Absolutely." He came out gushing over it. So people that haven't seen it yet, I cannot recommend it enough. How did you like the red carpet and that whole experience? I know you've probably done that before, but that had to be pretty unique for you. Pretty as far as who was involved.
Well, it's interesting. I kind of really hadn't done it before. I mean, I have been to things, but nothing that big,
right?
And nothing where I was genuinely a part of it. I sort of been to tag along with buddies of mine, and then after everybody's gone, I'd jump up on the red carpet and say, "Hey, take my picture." And then it was kind of interesting because I was not invited to the Los Angeles premiere, but I thought, well, okay, well, it's a small part and no worry. And I found out about it like the day before because somebody I knew was working, and they asked me if I was going, and if I was going, did Warner Brothers provide me with a car? And I'm like, I didn't even know it was happening. So I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, in the movies, these the hero here would be an intrepid guy, and he'd go down there and try to talk his way in and see if he could crash the event. So I kind of worked up my courage, and I decided to do that. And so I showed up, and I couldn't talk my way in, but it so happened that because it was being shown as part of the AFI Fest film festival, you could buy a ticket. So they were selling standby tickets, and so I stood in line. I bought a ticket and watched it. So I didn't get to do any of the red carpet stuff there, but I got to see the film. But then I did get an invitation to the Atlanta screening. And when I thought about it, well, that made sense because I did this job as an Atlanta local hire, which is a story on its own. And so, okay, well, they didn't even know I was here. So I went to Atlanta and did it. And it was a smaller thing. I mean, the big deal was LA. And so it was a little bit smaller, but it was still cool. I mean, Had a few pictures that show up on Getty Images, and I'm like, well, that's neat. That's different. And so it was fun. You know, it was a neat thing to do. I'm like, well, okay, I did that.
Yeah, very cool. Is there anything coming around the corner for you? Any projects in development now? Or are you, what's going on as far as moving forward for you, Garon?
I don't have anything in the dock right now, and it's Christmas is next week, I guess, isn't it? It's already next week, so the town's kind of shut down for now. So I'll be looking forward to coming back after the first of the year and getting right back at it and seeing what we can make happen.
Yeah, you're a good dude, and I do hope, Garon, that you do come back on the show. I really love talking. I mean, we spent over an hour talking, and I swear to God, it felt like 10 minit's. It's I really
Thank you. I mean, I've enjoyed myself. I certainly hope we can do it again. It's been fun. I'm thank you for your interest, and I'm flattered that you would want to speak with me, and I would absolutely love to do it again.